But some of that contradictory stuff, really, one part of practice is blowing our minds. Because it's our ideas and it's the rigidity of our thinking and belief system that keeps us trapped. So a lot of those words are poking at that belief system. Because for all of us, I mean, I don't know, there's about 20 people in this room, there's 20 different belief systems. And each one of us, you know, we probably, if we're honest, we'll admit to the flaws in our belief system or the ways our belief systems get us into trouble. But day to day, we kind of figure our belief system works for us on some level. We get by, we survive, we don't get hit by a truck. We, you know, if we're having to earn our living, we more or less are managing to do that. Especially when things are going well, we figure, oh, man, I've got a pretty cool belief system. But all of us discover at some point things also turn to shit. And then we got to deal with that. And then we wonder, well, is it my belief system? Is it my ideas? Is it the way I see the world that creates all this suffering? So in a book like The Compass of Zen, he's always pointing to opposites. A dualistic mind is a mind that is lost in opposites thinking. Good and bad, light and dark, right and wrong, up and down. That's our conventional mind. We separate things, we categorize things, and we make them into pairs of opposites. And it does feel like our material world is divided into opposites. Light and dark, good and bad, up and down, right and wrong. It's the way our human consciousness categorizes things. In and of itself, that's just the way human beings operate. It's not good or bad. But Buddhism is about the alleviation of suffering. So in order to work with the alleviation of suffering, we have to start investigating our own experience. So all through that book and all the other books and all of his teaching, and really all the teachings of Buddhism, are about investigate your experience. The only way Steve could discover that the substance of his finger, the substance of his robe, the substance of the floor, and the substance of the trees that he saw outside were the same substance was through a deep investigation of experience. So there's a lot of fancy names for Buddhist practice, but essentially it's investigating deeply. In Buddhism we say the great question, what am I? Just take a moment to be thankful for the rain. You know, back when I was in college, it was a song that I liked quite a lot. It was by a group named Traffic, and the heart of the song went, somebody is laughing and somebody is crying. So I just thought of that. It's like, I said, well, let's be thankful for the rain. But somewhere, probably pretty close to this building, and unfortunately maybe in this building, there's a leak in a roof. And that person is not very happy. When we discover the leak in the roof, suddenly that rain that we're thankful for turns into a demon. So what is it? Is it the divine beneficence of the heavens giving us life? Or is it the demon that grows up out of the underworld to screw everything up? Years and years ago, I was a carpenter, and I had this job. We were building a house on spec up in Mendocino. And there was one guy who was funding it, and I was on the crew. And we were moving towards completion, but we had this problem. Every time it rained, it leaked somewhere else. And I started to get the image of a raindrop with little horns at the end. And it was going to find just that place that was going to make us miserable. The year before that, as I'm telling the story, I'm remembering it was the drought of 76 and 77. We were running out of water. It was so precious. But the next year, there was too much. So that's our human thinking. Sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little. We're a little bit like Goldilocks. We're looking for it to be just right. And if we're lucky, we catch that point. But a minute later, it's changed. It's already different. But we're so attached to that just right thing that a little bit off this way and a little bit off that way, and we're stuck in suffering again. If we really investigate our experience, one of the first things we see is how easy it is to fall into suffering. No matter how great the day may be, it comes to an end. And the more we love what happened today, the more upset we are with that the day is ending. Because tomorrow it's different. It never stays the same. I'm being very Theravada here. I'm making time and space. So the way out of that is actually quite simple. It's simple to say, near impossible for us to do. And the way out of that kind of suffering is to accept everything as it is, equally. Not getting lost in our own likes and dislikes. Not trying to create a world that suits our own desire. But finding or accepting things as they are and working with them. That's Buddhism in a nutshell. That's that book in a nutshell. Accept things as they are, connect with things just as they are, and act in this world to bring help, peace, and healing, and love to everything around you. And you will succeed some of the time, you will fail some of the time. If you prefer success over failure, you'll suffer. If you accept success and failure with the same equanimity, you're free. It doesn't mean you have to favor failure. It just means you have to accept what is. And that's freedom. That's it. And all these practices that we do are about finding that freedom. If this finger, this rope, this stick, this floor, that window, and the rain outside of it are all the same substance, then we can just accept it as it is. But if we go to a restaurant and somebody serves us a plate of dog shit, we're not going to be very happy. So how do you live with this world? That's the challenge. Looks like this point us in a direction, but it's up to us to find out how to do it. That's the attainment that Steve is talking about. Steve is right. Attainment is the point. Sometimes Zen Master Bon Soeng would talk about attainment as digestion. It's like you can eat the meal, but until you digest it, you don't get its nourishment. So we have to digest our life. That's attainment. So I want to just do two brief things and then open up for questions. One is I want to talk a little bit about Zen Master Bon Soeng, because most everybody in this room never met him. Maybe just Paul and I. He was as funny as those books that Steve was talking about. The thing about Zen Master Bon Soeng that made him a great teacher was less what he said and more his beingness. I used to find that being around him, it would feel like everything in the world was a little bit surrealistic. Everything was funny. You spend a day with him, and you'd really be laughing all the time. he would, I don't know what he was doing, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was a young guy at the time. He thought I was weird. My hair was long. I was just told today that he thought, what is it with this Jeff guy? He's this Californian, he's kind of laid back, he doesn't seem that driven. Zen Master Bon Soeng was really energetic. And boom, he walked in a room, he controlled the energy. It's just the way he was. And he used to wonder, who is this guy? I was practicing, he could see I was practicing hard. He could see I was getting something. I mean, he's the one who made me a teacher, but he couldn't figure me out. But that's what was so beautiful about it. He was bizarre. I mean, the things that I learned from him, I can't even tell you. Because it was just in his actions. It was just in the way, the vitality, and the way he met the moment. I remember one of my friends, when we were with him, said, with Zen Master Bon Soeng, every day is a big day. It wasn't a day off. It wasn't like he had to work all the time. But each moment was alive. Each moment was fresh. That's what I felt being with him. And that's what I was attracted to. Now, to be fair and honest in the way I'm talking about this, his way of speaking the teachings resonated with me. But it was more the vitality and the aliveness that he brought to each moment. And that's what I've learned from him. And that's what I found and still find so powerful, is completely meeting the moment. The Olympics are just over, and I watched on and off during the 2 weeks. And one of the things that any athlete brings is they completely, or as best they can, in a way you just completely give yourself completely to the moment. And if you end up, as you're in the middle of twirling around about 12 feet above the wall, you miss it and you're back, bam, hit into the, I guess I'm thinking about that half-pipe thing, and bam, these people would knock themselves into it and they'd crash to the ground. And sometimes they'd lie there for a while, and then they'd get up, and then the next run they were doing it again. It's like, I'm not an athlete like that. I can't do that. But I can meet the moment that I'm in and give myself up to the moment and completely try to connect and be that moment. And this is Zen, so it's not athletics. It's one more step. It's we give ourselves over to the moment so that we can, in Zen Master Bon Soeng's words, we might say, make the moment correct. We can join with that moment and heal the moment. We can make the world a better place in this very moment. So world peace isn't some idea that we're going to get sometime. Right now, in this moment, the way I live my life right now is either going to create heaven or hell. So I want to finish by mentioning this cause and effect that Steve brought up. Because traditionally in Buddhism, cause and effect is called karma. Many of you have been here a while, you've heard me say this numbers of times, but it's important. Cause and effect leaves something very important out. Cause, let's say, for example, you have a match. The match is the cause. The effect is fire. What happens in the middle is taking the match and striking it, and then you get fire. So, and then fire is the next cause. This fire can turn into heating for nurturance and food, or it can turn into burning down a building. It depends how you use the fire. And that's the critical point. Karma isn't just cause and effect. It's cause, action, effect. What we have some say over is the action that we do, the action that we take. And this clarity and wisdom and this investigation into the belief system and the ideas help us clarify our minds so that we have the clarity and the wisdom when we act. Because think about it. Most often, we don't want to admit this about ourselves, but you watch other people, it's really easy to see. People are acting willy-nilly. You wonder, why did he do that? You see somebody who knows if you step off the curb when a car's coming, you're going to have a problem. But people do it. And usually it's because they're dreaming. They're not thinking. They're not present. They're in the dream world. And they miss all the cues. So practice is really quite practical. We get out of the fantasy, out of the dream world, out of stuck in the ideas and belief system, so we can actually be where we are. If we can attend to what's in front of us, we actually can find our way fairly easily. But if we're locked into our ideas and our dream world and just anywhere but here, we can't even pick up the cues that are right in front of us. So one student once asked Zen Master Bon Soeng, where can I find the Buddha Dharma? Bon Soeng said, right in front of you. The student said, you say right in front of you, but I don't understand. Bon Soeng said, if you make I, you'll never understand. It's very important. I is idea, beliefs, that small constructed self. If you make I, you'll never understand. So then the student said, do you understand, Zen Master? And Bon Soeng said, if you make I, it's impossible to understand. But if you make you, it's even more impossible to understand. So don't make I, don't make you, then what? That's it. That's the boil it all down. No I, no you, no this, no that, no good, no bad, no right, no wrong. Then what? Question? Comment? Anything anybody wants to talk about? Yes, sir.
Don't you think that that's just a way to avoid answering the question?
Absolutely not. Do you understand right in front of you?
No.
Do you have eyes?
I think so.
So use them. And then it's very clear. It's not avoiding the question at all. It's pointing you back. You. The Buddha Dharma is right in front of you. So see it, smell it, taste it, touch it. It's right here.
So, is there a difference between understanding and seeing?
There's a difference between understanding and attaining. So maybe you can, like Steve said, you can talk about what it's like to be in a plane and look down at the earth, but until you're there, you don't know it. Sometimes there'll be a question. Zen Master Soeng used to hold up, let's say, an apple. He said, what is this? So if you say an apple, you're attached to name and form. But if you say it's not an apple, then you're attached to emptiness. So without being attached to name and form, and without being attached to emptiness, what is it? So how could you answer? Anybody who doesn't already?
Nutrition.
I'm sorry?
Nutrition.
That's also an idea. How do you know? Ready? Yeah, he already knows, but you bite into it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, and then you know what an apple is. If you try to explain it to somebody in Japan and they don't speak English, you'll never explain it to them. But you hand it to them and they bite it and they chew it and they swallow, then they know. Make it your own experience. Not some teaching from a book, but your own experience. Okay?
My favorite Sun Tzu story that I've heard secondhand is he's having a Dharma combat with the Tibetan master, and he pulls up an orange and he says, "What is this?" And the translators go back and forth 5 or 6 times. The Tibetan master.
It was an orange. It was actually an orange and an Indian guru.
Oh, okay. And yeah, so they go back and forth, and eventually the guy gets frustrated with Sun Tzu. He goes, "What the hell's the matter with this guy? Don't they have oranges in Korea?" Different wavelengths. But so we have some flexibility on, this is a very practical question, on how we can sit with our legs. We can kneel, we can cross our legs. What are the thoughts about putting our hands in different places? It seems like a mudra is kind of inflexible. It feels a little more comfortable for me to put my hands on my knees.
Honestly, this is our form, so we do that. But you go to a Vipassana retreat, they sit like this. So in my mind, this is not better than this, but this is our way. A little discomfort is helpful. It's always good to have something in your practice that you don't like.
Because a lot of help.
Yeah, we always want to make it work. It's that just right Goldilocks thing again. So sometimes I tell people, go ahead, put your hands on your knees. But I say no. This is a wonderful thing. You put your hand in this oval, and you really, where you're placing it is just about 1.5 inches below your navel. And this is the place in Asia, in the Asian tradition. The Japanese call it the hara. It's translated as the center. The Koreans and the Chinese call it tanjen. Tanjen literally translates energy garden. And imagine you're holding your energy garden. The energy's coming in and going out. And this mudra keeps us awake, alive, and present. So, yeah, even you, Trevor, sometimes this next week, your hands get tired, you can go like this, that's okay. But come back to this.
Okay.
This helps us stay alert, stay present. Okay? But it is just form. Somebody else will tell you something completely different. It's okay?
In the beginning of his talk, Steve said, language is very important for me. And that brings a question. It looks like in Zen, we're trying to go beyond language. Language is almost vilified in literature. How it confuses
I wouldn't say that, because the old Chinese masters used language very carefully in order to help their students wake up. So language isn't the problem. It's our attachment to language that's a problem. Because we attach to that language, and then we believe what we're attached to, and we create a dream world and a story world. So language isn't the problem. It's the way we get stuck and lost in language that's the problem. So the Chinese masters use these stories, these questions, very precisely to help their students wake up and to end that attachment to language.
That's really curious about ending attachment to language, because in a way, language is what makes us human. If you take a child and drop them in the forest for wolves to care about them or some other animal, they don't grow up to be a human being in any meaningful sense of the word. So language seems to be very...
Just the way you think of a human being. That's your idea of what a human being is. And I don't disagree with what you're pointing to. But to say they're not a human being, they're a human being just by virtue of their biology and their genetics.
Well, in the sense that it's impossible to relate to them.
They're not conditioned. And I'm not saying conditioning is bad. I mean, wouldn't prefer my child to be the one raised by wolves and not be conditioned. But the conditioning has its own problem. It might be better than being raised by wolves, but that conditioning does lead to suffering. And we're all about suffering and the alleviation of suffering. So we use language to help ourselves wake up and be present and alive right now. Okay? Karen?
Speaking of language, you were saying there's no good or bad or this or that. And then you use a term that something uses a lot about correct situation. So if there's a correct situation, then that to me implies there's an incorrect situation.
Yeah, so you're attached to correct and incorrect. Use language to wake up. You're using language here to fall back into dualistic thinking.
And you can use correct situation non-dualistically.
Of course. Everything is non-dualistic. The one is the many is the one. One, when we think of everything as one, we say that's non-dualistic. But if we think there's a cup here and a book there, that's dualistic. But that's dualistic thinking. If the cup and the book are different manifestations of the same thing, then why do you make them different? But they're also not the same. So the definitions don't really hold. You know, the way I like to point to what Steve talked about, the finger, the robe, the stick, and the floor as being the same, is if you look at the periodic table of elements, everything is made up of the same substance. Without getting too refined, it's protons, neutrons, and electrons. The only difference is how many of them there are. That's the difference between carbon and gold, is the amount of protons, neutrons, and electrons that they have. But everything is reduced down to those things. And now we know that those things are getting broken down, and probably 20 years from now, whatever they're saying now are the smallest pieces, are going to get broken down. And it's probably a little bit like a Russian doll thing, where you can always keep going in and break it down and break it down and break it down. But it's all the same substance. It takes different forms. It appears differently in our world, but it's all the same substance. The one is the many is the one. Things appear and disappear. Stop time, boom, and things are just like they are. Just like this is truth. The lights are shining, the floor is reflecting. That's true, but you turn off the light, everything's changed. Last question? Comment?
So kind of on what Sergey said and Karen said, it seems to me that our experience or our experience is either we're attached to form, and when we're attached to form, we can't experience connectiveness. Mm-hmm. We're separate. Mm-hmm. But we come to a talk where they talk about this, or we read books that talk about this, and it's awkward because we don't get it. We read it.
Right.
A lot of people don't like belief systems, but some people say, oh, I believe this. And then they think they get it because they believe it, maybe. And then the same thing is when you, it seems to me oftentimes when you have a emptiness experience, like what you had was everything was the same, you can't see the separation or the form, you can't see it. So you can't really experience the form. And you're saying it's this attachment to form, so you can't really get the emptiness. And I see these arguments all the time where people are just saying, well, no, that is not the case. It was like what he was saying a little bit too. It's this awkward situation with our practice of not really experiencing it, but talking about it on Wednesday nights. Thank God we don't have to talk about it on any other day.
But the awkwardness is the dissonance. That dissonance makes us wake up. That dissonance, that rubbing against what's uncomfortable.
Some people don't want to rub though.
Well, then they don't come back.
Right.
But it's that rubbing that makes us wonder, what is it then? And it fires our question to investigate. So making ourselves uncomfortable is part of practice. That's why we do it. It's like, why would we spend 8 days with 20 people sitting in this room, sharing 2 bathrooms, eating all the meals here, some of them sleeping on the floor in this room? Why do that? In one sense, it's totally crazy. But in another sense, if you're willing to put yourself through it, some of it is horrible. Some of it is, you say, what the fuck? Why did I ever decide to do such a stupid thing? But then on the 6th day, you have a moment where your world opens up because you've been dealing with that dissonance and you just keep asking, what am I? Don't know. The hardest thing we have to learn is to settle into not knowing. We jump so fast to know because it makes us more comfortable. But that comfort actually leads us to suffering. Getting more comfortable with not knowing opens our lives. This is an incredible, amazing world. And we live like this. So we practice to open our vision so it's wide and clear. But it takes work, it takes effort. Thank you very much, sir.